everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Buzz presented by Canmar Events. The Buzz will shine a light on the movers, shakers, and innovators of the cannabis and psychedelics industry. My name is Kelsey Cannabis, and I will be your host for today's show. Our guest today is Dr. Sherry Boodram, who is a biological chemist by training, as well as a government regulatory expert and cannabis consultant. Dr. Sherry Boodram is the CEO and co-founder of CannDelta Inc, a leading regulatory and scientific cannabis consulting company based in Toronto that provides expertise and strategies in order to optimize the regulatory compliance of their clients' operations within the existing cannabis frameworks. Prior to founding CannDelta Inc, Dr. Boodram spent several years at Health Canada, most notably in the Medical Cannabis program as a senior regulatory compliance and enforcement officer. Dr. Sherry Boodram was fascinating to talk to. I learned a lot from this conversation, and I hope you do too. Enjoy. I am joined now with Dr. Sherry Boodram on The Buzz presented by Canmar Events. So Sherry, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Absolutely, of course. And of course, I'm very excited to speak with you today, especially after that introduction. So let's jump right into it. I'm very curious myself, and I know a lot of our audiences. So what sparked your passion for wanting to lead and start a leading regulatory and scientific cannabis consulting company in Canada?
A great intro question. I previously worked in a former life at Health Canada in their medical cannabis program as a senior compliance and enforcement officer. So that's a fancy name for saying a senior inspector. So I worked there for a number of years, and I've seen a few iterations of the regulations. I was there from the MMPR through to the ACMPR, and then I left right as the cannabis regulations were being drafted. So I fortunately was able to provide some field level input into the drafting of the regulations. So that was a really awesome experience to kind of, see the industry evolve and see the legislation evolve. So that, having that background, I think it's obviously, really valuable for our clients in that sense. But really, when I worked as an inspector, I saw a lot of instances of, non-compliances, not necessarily major, maybe like a minor, moderate sort of non-compliance occurring that was, really avoidable, I think, in some cases. It really was stemming from not having a clear understanding of what the regulations were asking license holders for, and not really understanding what Health Canada's expectations were. And how to be compliant, how to respond to questions that they may have, and things like that. So I'm a chemist.
A few questions, right?
Yeah,
a few of them there with Health Canada.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm a chemist by training, so I've been in school for many years, and I have a PhD in chemistry, and through that I've worked as a teacher's assistant and have done a lot of teaching and as well as tutoring as well. So I always had that love for helping people understand concepts.
Sure.
And when I was an inspector, I always try to make things as clear as possible so that they understood what was expected of them, what sort of responses I was looking for, and things like that. And at the time, the industry was still pretty new, and now you see a lot of programs that exist, a lot of training programs and courses offered by colleges and even some universities that are helping people understand the industry, and that wasn't something that was being offered back then. And as an inspector, we were always told, you're regulators, you're not a consultant, so we weren't allowed to help consult them or sort of teach them in the same manner that a consultant might. It was more of providing education and compliance promotion in a very standardized way, and the standard responses were not always helpful, and there aren't always cookie cutter responses to some of the situations. So that approach, doesn't really, work holistically. And I saw that a lot of companies did want to do better. They just didn't feel like they had the tools and the support from Health Canada necessarily to get them there, especially with, definitely a newer industry. So, being an inspector and having a love for education, I think those two things combined really, pushed me into, well, not really pushed me, but maybe have that realization that, this is something that I can definitely contribute to. And it always feels good to know that you've helped someone. And that really got me excited about starting CannDelta.
Yeah, that's remarkable. As I like to say, Health Canada is amazing and they're amazing at regulating. So I can appreciate where it would be difficult when, of course, you want to reach out and go, well, if you make a few changes here or you're mindful of this, that your business and what you're trying to achieve can be a lot more streamlined and ideal. And I always like to say it's just a lot of times people don't know what they don't know. So the fact that you're able to then move into a consulting role so people can approach you and get from A to B a lot faster is really going to help everyone overall. So we're really glad that you have that kind of insight that you were able to take from being in the regulatory field with Health Canada, especially in the medical cannabis division, and then being able to offer that insight. We've kind of got an ace in the deck with you when it comes to getting that advice quick. So it's really amazing to hear about where your passion started. And again, with that education and teaching, I know that you're so great at that. So the mesh and the design of where your future took you is just seems to be in a great fit. So I really am glad to hear that. Yeah, absolutely. You add so much value, and on a regular basis, we're in the industry talking about you a lot, Sherry. So it's just really nice to hear where that passion kind of was ignited. With respect to CannDelta, I know that CannDelta helps people navigate, of course, this regulatory framework specific to Canada. That can be people who are looking to enter the space in a variety of different capacities, whether that may be a licensed producer, those who are looking to obtain a retail license, or even entrepreneurs who are interested in bringing new cannabis technologies to Canadian markets. So you can be on the newer end or more well-versed into your business, but again, have these regulatory issues that you come across because, as we both know, Health Canada is ever changing. So what are, say, the biggest hurdles that you find these new companies often run into with respect to regulatory issues?
Honestly, we find that it's such a big learning curve for a lot of our clients who are coming to the industry to just get used to even working within a regulated industry. Like, aside from regulatory issues, I think that's it's obviously part of it and a little bit down the road, but just having that frame of mind. There are a lot of people who come to us that have some business background, whether it's owning their own business or working closely at sort of an upper management level with a business, but really being able to learn legislation, knowing how to interpret that, setting up a compliant operations, getting staff to follow that, reporting to Health Canada, even things like participating in inspections and being questioned, understanding the landscape itself is, in a fairly new industry, is a massive learning curve for a lot of people. And at the end of the day, there are errors that could be made that are could be significant and quite damaging if you're not educated in what your responsibilities are in that industry, and that eventually leads to things like regulatory issues down the road. So it's definitely an area that we like to help our clients with, especially from right from the get-go when they come to us with needing help on an application. That's sort of one thing, and a lot of times clients think, okay, I've gotten my license, so all is good now. But then they realize very quickly that, okay, this is just the beginning.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. I think that's, you hit the nail on the head, so to speak, in terms of many aspects. I mean, like you're saying, legislation, it is one thing to interpret it. You can read Health Canada's website, and applying that information is, of course, a lot different than just reading it, let alone the fact that we are a newer industry. And coming back to what those don't know, what they don't know, I think it's an industry where it's not, as you would say in others, it's better to beg for permission than, or beg for forgiveness rather than ask for permission. And
Right.
that's not the case with regulatory issues. That's not the case with Health Canada. And you want to know that information up front, because there are a lot of issues that can come up. But if we have somebody like CannDelta or a consulting company that can oversee these issues, it's really going to cut down on ramifications for these business owners, for these companies that, of course, they're starting a new company or they've been operating for a while, but they know their lane very well. And this is many lanes put together. So being able to deal with those hurdles, and there are many, is something that is going to happen with these businesses. It's not going to be 100% perfect all the time. And these hurdles do come up, like you're saying. I mean, being compliant is a huge issue, let alone having your inspections and your cleaning and everything up to date, and then reiterating that to Health Canada so you can pass these different stages of licensing. Like you said, it's not you get your license and you wash your hands with the regulatory work. It doesn't work like that. With these issues, and of course there are many, but they can be addressed. What is the best way to often overcome these issues that we're speaking of right now for those who are listening?
Yeah, well, you kind of said it. I mean, the best way really is to work with a good consultant. In any industry, it's important to have the right support. We know whether it's accountants, lawyers, marketing teams. I mean, there's so many different types of consultants, and working in a regulated industry, a regulatory consultant adds so much value to a company at the pre-licensing stage, and then, as we were saying, even post-licensing. So it's definitely a good investment to make, and to have that type of support where you could just ask, even just fire off a quick question on something that you're not certain of, that could also help guide your business and help you strategize and really find the right placement within the industry. So I can't really stress that enough. To finding a good consultant is really important. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a consultant.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously I'm somewhat biased, but in any industry, like even the pharmaceutical industry is a heavily regulated industry as well. NHPs, food, cosmetics, and they have consultants. I know that a lot of these companies are a lot bigger, but even for some of the smaller startup pharmaceutical companies, I also, in a past life, I also worked in the pharma industry, and you need to have that kind of support, because it's so much that it could be really overwhelming very quickly if you're trying to run a company and then trying to keep on top of all these regulatory aspects that you need to, whether that's reporting and making sure your staff know how to be compliant. It's a lot. So you do need the support.
Let alone the paperwork. The paperwork trail is quite long and lengthy at the request of Health Canada. We won't get started on SOPs and what that can look like, but of course, CannDelta can address that. It is very important for the consulting. I couldn't agree more. We're building a foundation, and you want to build that foundation strong and accurately, rather than find out after the fact of these simple issues that can cause delays in licensing, that can cause fees or denials on applications. And of course, there's consulting that is important. We go to our doctors for consulting, we go to lawyers, financial planners, many friends and family who may have an area of expertise. So being mindful of knowing what we don't know and staying in our lane, but reaching out to those who know the due diligence. And besides the regulations, we'll add on the ever-changing regulations. Being able to offload that into an expert adds so much value. And of course, we're talking about regulatory consulting here, Sherry. I myself obviously can't recommend CannDelta enough. I've heard such wonderful things, but exactly what you're saying, consulting is so important in terms of regulatory aspects. We have consultants in the industry, for example, that can consult when it comes to growing. They may not have any education. They may not actually have any experience when it comes to growing. So on that aspect, what would you look for a good regulatory consulting company, and how to know that you're investing your money and your time, but your output will be profitable, and it's not a gimmick for some companies that offer consulting, so to speak. So what is it that companies can look for? Like education, reviews?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Reviews, all that you've said, reviews, education for sure. Get a good sense of what their backgrounds are, and that you can actually find that background, because, even outside of this, I've, looked for consultants on other things, and you Google the person and you can't find anything about them. You can't find the company. You don't know anything about, even who they've worked with. And that's another great way to find out, is ask them for references. See who they've worked with, and see if those customers are actually satisfied. I think that's a really great way. So, I mean, people need to have a track record that they can stand behind. And when you have an intro call with a consultant, it's good even just to get a sense of who they are. You're going to be spending a lot of money, and you're going to be working really closely with these people. So make sure you like them.
Yeah, make sure the fit's there. I think that's well said. And being able to check those reviews are excellent. We're in a world with a digital footprint everywhere you go. So it would be a red flag, and an excellent point. If you're looking up some research of the company or the individual or the services they offer, and you find not so much information, or something that's making you feel uncomfortable, either look into that more deeply, or perhaps find a different consultant. But you're right, it's got to be a natural synergy fit. Good reviews, established in the market, and have worked with other clients is something you definitely want to look for consulting. And I know CannDelta does have that information readily available. So I can imagine, as a consulting company within the regulatory framework, you are asked many questions. And specifically, of course, we'll talk about the most common would be with cannabis licensing applications for Health Canada. So with current wait times right now being up to 24 months to receive licensing from that starting application to that final sales license, how does CannDelta assist with that timeline for the many cannabis license types? Because we know there are many that are available under the Cannabis Act. How would that assist with the consulting company, and what does CannDelta do to shorten that timeline?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's probably a question that we get asked all the time.
Yeah,
And luckily, Health Canada has gotten a lot better at reviewing and approving licensing applications. So that's been great on their side. From working at Health Canada and being an inspector, I also reviewed applications as well, especially closer to the actual pre-licensing, when there used to be pre-licensing inspections. And the biggest holdup on applications are just applications that are either incorrectly completed or missing information. So it's really important to include the right detail and information in the application. So it's not just a matter of just spewing out all this information. You need to make sure it's what they're really asking for, and that it's presented in a very specific way. And that's not always very intuitive to a lot of people on how they need to present that information in a way that Health Canada likes to see it. So a lot of times it ends up being a lot of trial and error. Health Canada will ask for more requests for information, and then it just really delays the process for much longer than it needs to be. And I know from reviewing applications that I don't like hanging on to files forever. Like, you do want to get it off your desk.
Get them off the desk.
Yeah. So I mean, you don't want that back and forth either, but I mean, you can't really tell people, again, like when I go back to saying that you're not a consultant, you can't really always go back and tell the client, okay, this is exactly what I want to see. This is the sentence you need to write. Like, it's not really like that. And some reviewers are a lot more easier to work with than others, and help move the process along easier, but that's it's not always the case. And so the way the information is put together is really important, as well as the security clearance portion of it tends to hang up a lot of applications, because that's sort of outside of Health Canada's control. It's initiated and processed by the RCMP, and they have their own timelines. Yeah, they've gotten better, where they have dedicated officers who are now reviewing cannabis files. So that's been helpful, and they've been processing it and been able to prioritize certain files that are getting closer to the approval from the application review standpoint. But if people are not really careful on how they consider their organizational structure, so the org structure really determines who needs the security clearances. And if you're not really fully understanding or transparent on who needs to get cleared, then that, kind of, you're ready in the review, and then Health Canada will say, well, what about this person? And then, you didn't submit a clearance for them, and then you got to go back. So there are a few factors that delay the licensing application. So putting together a very good application is really important, and that's what we do at CannDelta. We'll make sure that your application has all the information that it should, that it's presented in a way that Health Canada understands. And we've gone through this so many times that we know what Health Canada is looking for, and we know the questions that they're going to ask. So before they do have some standard questions that they do ask. So before they even ask it, we'll make sure that that's in your application right from the get-go.
Oh, fair enough. I can imagine and appreciate what you're saying about effective communication, because you don't want to spew all that information. You need to dot your I's and cross your T's, because we're dealing with a regulatory government framework. So if you're applying for a mortgage, you have to do it in the way that they want. If you're applying for your taxes, etc., there is a format. No red pens, don't get any ideas, etc., with color. And that is the same in terms of Health Canada. And usually when people are applying, as we can appreciate, they're applying for their first time. So when we have these consulting companies like yourself, such as CannDelta, who gets to oversee and say, correct that, fix that, did you know, that's really going to save all of us time and money, because those licenses are detailed. They do require a lot of time. As you're saying, the security checks, they're out of their hands, but they can take a few months. And if we're delayed on that information, it's obviously going to delay the whole application process. So being mindful of that and being aware of the communication style is really going to expedite a lot of issues for a company, whether entrepreneur, or LP, or retail, etc. I know that in addition to SOPs, which we're in need of them everywhere.
Yeah, everyone loves those.
Yeah, the SOPs. But hey, if you guys are lost with SOPs, and I know many of you are probably thinking that right now, Sherry, CannDelta, they have got you covered with those SOPs, because there are many. But besides SOPs, site evidence packages, I know you offer, including packaging and labeling reviews, which are very stringent with Health Canada. CannDelta also offers on-site inspections and audits, which are huge. The inspections are, you get your chance, and it needs to be done well and at that time. And there's a lot of things that they ask for that people just don't know until it's happening. So what are the most common mistakes found in inspections and audits that you would reference?
Yeah, I would say number one is record keeping. Record keeping really feeds into everything. It's not just inventory. It's not just tracking your inventory. It's literally everything. Yeah. It's your sanitation is also tracked through record keeping. Security incidents are also tracked through record keeping. Once you have the inventory in your facility, every single step that the inventory goes through, whether it goes to destruction or through the whole production cycle, it goes through testing, release, it all needs to be tracked in a way that meets the regulations and is very clear on its life cycle and its history. And I think that it does involve a lot of paperwork, and I think that that's why it's been such a challenge for a lot of people. A lot of license holders rely very heavily on the tracking software, which is great, but it has its limitations. And the limitation is, if you don't know how to use that software to its full, capability, then it's only going to be so good. And the software should also be supplemented by paper records. Like if you have, sanitation records, that's something that you're going to have to, fill out on paper.
Yeah, and literally on paper.
Literally on paper, and
lots of paper.
Lots of paper. Know where that's going to be stored. Make sure the right people are signing off. Make sure the QAP signs off on it. So, that's if that's not done correctly, that's really a lot of times where Health Canada catches people.
And fair enough, because it's besides having to be in a high, clean, sanitized facility in terms of growing in this example, they do need to know everything. Everything needs to be crossed. Like I say, your T's and your I's dotted. Everything has to be signed off on. You've got to measure down to the water that you're mixing with parts per million with a nutrient, etc. They want to know everything. When you're harvesting, weighing in when it's hasn't been dried, weighing after it's been dried, weighing it in the packaging. It is extensive, but when there are these consulting companies coming in, I can appreciate that is obviously going to and naturally reduce these common mistakes because people aren't making them for the first time when somebody's overseeing saying, hey, don't even do that in the first place. So there's a faster way to learn rather than learning after one makes a mistake. But yeah, the paper trail is extensive. A lot of people can be frustrated because they want to get into the industry for growing cannabis and making their products, etc. But you do have to be mindful of the framework, of the paperwork, and it has to be completed in order to be licensed and operational and continue to be operational. So although it's not easy doing that paperwork, getting those sign-offs, get into the habit, it will become a habit and it will be your best friend. But if we can avoid those mistakes, it's definitely something that we want to do, because to think you won't have any is just not realistic. Any type of company is naturally going to have those type of issues, and let's avoid them where possible. So I also know, Sherry, that at a federal level, of course, here in Canada, where we're licensed and allowed to consume cannabis across the country, we hear many of times of within the cannabis regulatory framework, information is changing, especially with Health Canada, the regulatory framework, and it's very critical information for those working within the industry. They need to know the changes and what's up to date, what's been going on, what you can and can't do anymore. So how does one stay up to date with these changing regulations from Health Canada?
Well, there's that saying, your network is your net worth. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, especially during a pandemic when you're working from home and you're not, interacting with people the way that you normally do. So maintaining your network and keeping those relationships are super important. And this could be done through many ways. Luckily, everyone has pivoted really well, I would say, being in a pandemic, and created new ways of communicating and more efficiently. So that's been really awesome to see. So for example, it can be done through attending networking sessions at virtual conferences, not just in the areas that you're interested in, but attend those areas that are, maybe, in the industry, but a little bit outside of what you would normally look for. And that's really good at expanding your network, because a person that you meet through one of those networking sessions might know someone that can help you in an area that you're looking for, right? So it's really expanding your network, and I think that's really useful. I also think that following social media platforms are also really important as well. The cannabis industry is largely on LinkedIn and Twitter, so following people on those platforms is really helpful, and it's been really helpful for me. Add them as your friends, and engagement is huge. So interact with them to boost your own visibility as well, and to support your colleagues, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Comment on something that you agree with, like it, share it. And I think that helps us all. So I do all of those. And in addition to that, well, for me personally, I like to stay in touch with my former colleagues, and I've built some really great friendships while I was at Health Canada, and there are some super nice, great people there, and I can't say enough nice things about them. So it's always nice to connect with past colleagues as well.
Yeah, that's remarkable. Anyone I've experienced with Health Canada has been doing such a great job. They're very great to speak with. You can get in contact with them on a regular basis. And we have to remember, we're all humans at the end of the day trying to complete our tasks. So although it can be difficult with Health Canada, there are these consulting companies such as yourself to streamline that process. And I think it's great what you're saying about joining events there are these virtual events nowadays because of COVID, but there's always beauty in the chaos. There's that silver lining, and it allows you to, like you're saying, network, get in front of an audience that you normally wouldn't be able to listen to or be able to maybe attend because it's on the other side of the country, etc. And the cannabis industry is large, but also the cannabis industry is a family, and very happy to help each other, very glad to network and
Absolutely.
make friends and help each other out, because we are just a type of community. So it's not a matter of just reading online. It's also getting yourself out there, being open to these different ideas and conversations that you're saying, and seeing where the best fit is for learning information, such as social media, like you're saying. Oddly enough, LinkedIn is the space for the cannabis industry. There is Twitter, there is linked, or Instagram, I should say, that's less stringent from Facebook.
Yeah, I would say less so.
Yeah, but if you have any of those platforms for those people watching, you can just tune in, see what people are posting for advice, for education, for knowledge, and just being more up to date with what's going on, rather than designating time to read a government website. So those are all excellent points, Sherry. Thank you for sharing those as well. So as we wrap up, and while we have your remarkable insight from years, literally years of working within the cannabis industry, and knowing that CanMar events here at CanMar Recruitment, they work with a variety of clients from across Canada, from across the globe, from startup businesses to established licensed producers, to lawyers, to universities. So for yourself, what would you say to those who are wanting to get into the cannabis industry? What experience do you need? Do you need experience? What are your thoughts with your expertise?
Yeah, I would say just do it. It's an exciting and vibrant industry with people from all walks of life and backgrounds and expertise. And I think that's really what makes the cannabis industry super amazing and appealing. We have a real opportunity, and I think a really rare opportunity to shape a new industry, and we're actually changing history. And it's not very often that you could say that. I think there's a place for everyone, and I love how all sorts of tangential industries come together to provide a service or a product. And I've even bumped into people from other aspects of my life who have found their way to the cannabis industry as well, that you wouldn't even necessarily think of. So I think that there's definitely a fit for everyone, that if you are lacking some experience, that you can take a course or get some training from the various training colleges that have some really, really good programs. If there's you feel you need a little bit of support to sort of boost your resume. But really there's a place, I think, for everyone in here in the industry. And that's really where people like CanMar, I think, comes in, that can help people find the right fit, find the right job for them, and make the connections.
Yeah, that's excellent points too, Sherry. For those who are wanting a place to start, absolutely look into any type of courses, look into any education, talk to us. We don't bite. If you want to meet us on LinkedIn and have those conversations, we're ready to have them. And as you can see here today, here's two professionals who utilize and are in the cannabis industry. There's not a stigma. You can be very professional, and you can be, like you're saying, adding to history that is changing in many ways, whether that's a retail capacity, whether you're working in a scientific research capacity, or somebody who's on the front lines selling and making those sales. So those are great points. There is a place for you. Do join us if you're interested, and don't worry, of course, about stereotypes, because the cannabis industry, it's growing, pun intended. And I like what you say. I think we're setting a standard for other industries about how you can care about other businesses and people, and how it's not about the dollar at the end of the day. So it's a great industry to be in. And for somebody like yourself, who is so well educated and knowledgeable in the area, we're thankful to have you, because you are adding so much value. And I know other people can too. So lastly, what overall advice from a regulatory perspective as an expert would you have to offer to those who are watching today?
Yeah, I think that we discussed it a lot with, finding the right help when you need it. I think it's important to always be solutions focused, to keep moving forward. We've seen, people have been very resilient in this industry, right from the beginning of this industry. It hasn't been easy starting up an industry and having such a large learning curve, and then being hit with a pandemic and people having to pivot their businesses. But to me, it just shows how resilient everyone is. And I think that's super great to see. And it's still important to have the right support so you could continue, with the trajectory of, compliance and having that, the support that you need. So reaching out to the right people is super important. So I would say my advice would be to, keep moving forward, find solutions, and, keep being resilient. So I think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, those are all excellent points. There's nothing wrong with asking for help because we are experts in our own area. So let's defer to the experts in other areas so they can assist us. I like to joke around. You can either have excuses or you can have results. So if you don't know the answer, there is nothing wrong with reaching out, getting that help, getting that insight, because there is that experience that comes with these consulting companies that we just don't have as new businesses and new entrepreneurs. So again, we're so lucky to have you, Sherry, to have companies like CannDelta who have seen a need in the market, who are willing to educate and wanting to get us faster from that point A to that point B. So thank you for being here. Thank you for adding so much value to our industry, and just we appreciate you. So Sherry, where can people find you for those who want to learn more about yourself and CannDelta?
Yeah, please visit our website at CannDelta.com. We're active on LinkedIn. You search CannDelta Inc. and also on Twitter. Our handle is at CannDelta. You could also email us at info@CannDelta.com, and one of our amazing, personable, educated consultants will reach out to you.
Perfect. And the website's excellent for those who want to check out the website. It is very detailed. There is an explanation of the services that are offered, whether you, again, are retail bringing a product to the market in need of SOPs, inspections, licensing, application. CannDelta is the place you want to go. Sherry and her team are remarkable. So thank you so much for your time today, Sherry. We're so grateful to have you. Thank you for our audience who are listening to The Buzz, presented by Canmar Events. And it's been lovely speaking with you, Sherry.
Great speaking with you as always. Thanks, Kelsey.
Thank you.
And The Buzz.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, that's a wrap for another episode of The Buzz, presented by Canmar Events, with myself, Kelsey Cannabis, as your host. We want to thank you for stopping by and spending time with us. Remember to check out Canmar Events or Canmar Recruitment on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And check out Canmar Hub Community Space on LinkedIn for educators, enthusiasts, and professionals alike. Until next time, Canmar is bringing you endless possibilities.